This recording is protected by copyright. No part may be reproduced without the prior permission of the University of South Australia.
I want to thank you so much for having me here tonight. Thanks to everyone who came out. It's an honour and a pleasure to be here on Kaurna country. Always was, always will be Aboriginal land. I drove all the way from Queanbeyan in New South Wales to be here. It took me 3 days. I went past some beautiful places. I went past some, I don't know, sort of snow towns in the making, they looked like, on the way. But I had a really enjoyable trip, and I love coming to Adelaide. It's been a long time since I've been here. So yeah, thank you for coming here to celebrate my new book, Killernova. It's a mixture of poetry and artwork, and these are woodcut prints. I wanted to, very stubbornly, I wanted to drive down here so I could show you guys in person the artworks that I'd made. And I learnt back in Borneo, where my father comes from, it's one of the most popular art forms amongst young environmental activists, and especially in the punk rock scene. And Borneans in Malaysia learnt it from a great Indonesian collective called Taring Padi from near Yogyakarta. And so a few years ago I was having, I guess, what you could call a bit of a dark night of the soul, and I was travelling to the heart of Borneo by public ferry, sleeping on deck with all the other passengers, chatting to locals. I didn't speak English for a few weeks, and going right into the heart of the homeland. And on that trip, I saw some very beautiful things. You know, I saw ancient longhouses with spirits and animals carved into the beams. I eventually saw primary rainforest after a few days, but I also saw a lot of horrific things. I saw the effect of environmental destruction on Borneo, logging, open-cut mines, and so I felt rather conflicted on this trip. And on this trip, I also, I guess, got in touch with my heritage in a rather complicated way. I felt some of those things that those of us in various diasporas feel, a very soulful connection to the place, but then at other points I felt like a tourist or an intruder. At other points, as I was reading historical accounts of Borneo, trying to understand this place that I feel so soulfully connected to. At those times, I even felt almost like a colonial anthropologist looking at it through the eyes of a colonialist in the 1920s or something. So, you know, these things are never simple. They're always nuanced. But these are the things that I should be discussing with Jess. So I think I'm just going to do some poetry. All right, so to start off, I want to do something that's a little bit like a meditation, you know, because I think one of the cool things about performance is that you can take all these different people with different backgrounds, and somehow, if you're good at what you do, you can create a singularity. So this one is called I Am a Homeland. So the word in Malay or Indonesian for homeland is tanah air. So tanah means earth, air means water. And so those two things, there's been an interplay, an essential interplay between those two things in the archipelago of Southeast Asia, where there's thousands of islands. But in somewhere like Borneo, there's often been conflict between the people of the land, of the interior, and the peoples of the coastline, of the sea. But I myself contain within my own heritage both land people and sea people. So when I say inhale, I want you all to inhale like a meditation. When I say exhale, I'd like you all to exhale. All right. Inhale. Exhale. Inhale. Exhale. Aku tanah air. I am a homeland, weighted to the ocean floor by a moral conundrum. On the waking edge between forested life and limitless sleep, sand is scalloped like an ear. It hears, listens, fizzes, rustles. Hold breath like confession, sayang, now let it go in rhythm. Inhale, I am singular. Exhale, I appear in many places. South, southwest, The pirate winds go through my slatted bones, bind me in smoke. Romanticism fattens and bloats around the liver. Realpolitik and electroshock to the heart. Coins sink upwards out of my pores and stories are engraved with my blood. There are durian husks and potato skins on these shores. Inhale, I am yearning. Exhale, I am inconsequence. I hear them call me an illegitimate kingdom, fake Muslim, snake oil trade port, middle-class mirage, an empty plot where the rivers commingle, orchids and torch ginger, my garlands have started to rot. The plastic fish mounted on the wall is singing its last poorly penned jingle. Inhale, I am fraud. Exhale, I am truth. North, northeast, I am a land of disorder. My existence, resistance to admin and trade companies, cannons and capital. Colonizers fuck me with mechanical dicks to extract my hidden glint. Drill down into my flesh and there lie the oil wells that will set the forest aflame. Inhale, I am anger. Exhale, I am acceptance. I nearly forgot there. Hold on, I'm not finished. At times I am glacial peak and polar ice cap, but hard shards sharp from chiseling melt and become the rising tide. The eagle's swoop swells to tempest, typhoon, cyclonic midnight marauder. There never has been, never will be a force of nature like me, Omar bin Musa, the monsoonal flow state over the loose leaf, the Bruce Lee when he says be like water. Inhale, I am cliche. Exhale, I am ambiguity. Impossible to bear it seems these days, but the words tana and air are combined in me, land people, sea people, once warring factions, but now two parts combined into a necessary whole. But remember, the tide reverses often, and I am no one. Hold up. I am no one thing. Inhale. Exhale. Thank you. This is a bit jumpy, isn't it? Is it all right? All right. Thank you. Okay, so they say no man is an island, you know, maybe each person is a homeland. But this next poem is about the land I grew up on, Australia, you know. And I dedicated it. Well, look, when you're a person with the name Omar bin Musa and you dare speak your truth, or even speak at all sometimes in public, you get a certain response from a sizable segment of the Australian population. And one of the things that these old chestnuts in the peanut gallery, to mix a nut metaphor, level at your boy, at me, is that I'm un-Australian. They always say that. They always go, oh, that bloke, Osama Mawusu, he is bloody un-Australian. And there was one particular guy, actually, that I had in mind when I was writing this next poem. He goes by the name of Mark Latham. You might have heard of him, who was sending all his vitriolic hordes after me, saying that I was un-Australian and, you know, this and that. And I was getting all sorts of crazy death threats from his followers and, you know, saying I needed a bullet in the head and stuff. You know what's crazy is that I actually voted for Mark Latham in 2004. First time I ever voted. I voted for him, and this is how he repays me. I mean, now it seems crazy, right, to the younger people in the audience, but it's like at the time, it was, you know, it was choosing between him and John Howard. It was like the devil in the deep blue sea, so, you know, don't judge me too harshly. But anyway, I wrote an open letter to these people who call me un-Australian, so I'm going to do it for you now. Let me tell you what's un-Australian, mate. Australia. It's time we shuffle this country off to deed poll, I reckon. sign the papers, add 2 letters, and rename it Un-Australia. Un-Australia, an ill-advised artwork defined by negative space. We define selves by what they are not, crude white lies told in blackface. Hey, come watch the parade in Un-Australia, land of the fair-skinned, fairy-bred, fair gay. Let's put a shark net around the island, mummify childhoods in barbed wire, but please make sure it's 5,000 k's out of sight, out of mind, so we can relish our snap, crackle, pop, 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 pop. Watch Fruity Loops bounce around the porcelain, same colour as the flag we wipe our asses on when we take a plebiscite. Go postal in Un-Australia, land of the culture wars. Get crop dusted by the heroin white noise of bureaucracy, stunned and softened up. Now jingo grenades bomb sense of self to phantom limb. You know the deal. Axe the tax. Stop the boats. Aussie, Aussie, Aussie. Oi, it's Un-Australia, where politicians roll up shirt sleeves and go panning in the mainstream. The river formerly known as Shit Creek. They'll sift up some nuggets of fool's gold, but not even a mining boom could buy compassion. They smear Vegemite vows on the toilet wall. Go on, have a read. That which was written, that which was hidden, punch drunk love left the barflies smitten, drive it like you stole it, get in where you fit in, the brakes wear out when a nation's joy-ridden. It's Un-Australia, hear voices detonate from tuck shop to quarter-acre block. Freedom of speech! Freedom of speech! But beware the fine print, my friends, all need not apply. If you're black, brown, Muslim, woman, queer, smart, proud, if you dare question a cross-eyed sacred cow, they'll twine newspaper headlines to a noose and lynch you from a Daily Telegraph poll. So welcome to Un-Australia. Thank you. Thank you. All right, so this next one, I guess leads on from that one. That was a more lighthearted one. This one, it's my version of it, all right? Laughter in the dark. This next one I wrote after I visited the Al-Noor Mosque in Christchurch a few years ago. And so, as everyone would know, there was a horrendous event at that mosque, the Christchurch massacre. And there was a guy called Haji Daud Nabi who was at the door. And as the gunman entered, the man said to him, "Welcome, brother," or "Hello, brother." It's kind of disputed. But he welcomed the man who then shot him and then shot all those other people. And that moved me a lot, you know, because it said a lot about him. But it also said something about this faith, this culture that is so demonized, but that I've always had a very complicated relationship with throughout my life. And so that complicated relationship played itself out when I went there. So this is dedicated to him, dedicated to the victims and survivors of the Christchurch massacre. My marrow is a sponge steeped in rum. My septum and heart are covered in crystals, rashes of them, shimmering scabs of them. With each pulse they burst forth a new tumor made of quartz. I draw down my sleeves to cover my tattoos. Standing there on the pavement, there where it is too much to bear, there are roses and letters, Ponamu greenstone and candles burned way down. There is a banner of hope stretched taut as a nerve. Allah bless our country, land of love and compassion. Kids are playing on the steps while their parents make ablutions, ready still for prayer. Make sure the water goes above the elbow and the ankle, I hear my father say. I cannot enter the mosque, though I have no doubt I would be welcome. Welcome, brother. The man's last words before Armageddon. Rice, tea, hands, smiles, cloth, whispers, shrouds. Despite everything that is and everything that isn't, these people and I share something, not spelled perhaps in any book, not spelled in falling rain or the smoke rising from the mouth of a gun. But still, I cannot enter the mosque. But I raise my hands, cupped lightly, to say dua. Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi rajiun. When I was a kid, I used to think that if I held my hands this way, I could catch rain, and that the water in my palms would become a mirror, or better yet, a window through which I might be able to see God. I never did. But today, my hands catch tears. And although the water in my palms trembles and sways, I swear, just for a moment, I swear, it stands still. Thank you. Whew. I'm going to do one more. Is that all right? One more? Yeah? I feel like that was pretty somber. All right, I'm going to make a little, well, I don't know if this is really hopeful. It's my version of hopeful, okay? This next one is called Fuck Batman. I wrote this in collaboration, like a lot of the book is about collaboration. And I wrote this poem with a Nigerian poet and playwright called Inua Ellams, who's really amazing. And he envisioned COVID as Batman swooping down over Gotham City / London. And so I did my own version, the Queanbeyan Fuck Batman 2.0. It goes like this. The truth is, parts of us secretly welcomed the prophet of oblivion, its 1,000 rapturous faces, the flapping beat of its leathery wings, its messianic cape and accelerant of Armageddon, its balled-up breath plummeting down, crumpling the traffic jams of our silence, screaming. It was a weight unknown we had always known. The truth is, parts of us secretly rejoiced that we could finally drop our masks, relinquish the facade of civility, and welcome the end of days. The wild children wore pastor necklaces. They hunted with sardine cans beaten into shanks. They streamed toilet paper across the emptied cities. The grandfathers listened to radio broadcasts, sanitized their hands with night-brewed moonshine, and came to different conclusions. The grandmothers grew parsley and shot Zoom bombers. There were voices swooping in the skies above the streets. We sat on our windowsills, drinking ink, singing lockdown nocturnes, cabin fever dreaming, unscrambling our future from a mess of blinding stars. We searched for patterns and rearranged history. We made jigsaw pictures of places we might never visit again. There is Mount Kinabalu and the Tamparuli Bridge. Here is Semporna with yellow and pink coral. There are the reefs that will breathe again. Here are the turtles and their quiet hymns. We grew madder, yet clearer-headed with each day. We cried and we laughed and we cried again. We chiseled our faces to suit our moods before settling on perverse joker smiles. We melted down all the votive candles we had lit in tribute to our pasts and recast them as clear crayons to create the myths of our tomorrows. Thank you. All right. Thank you so much. Okay, I'm now going to invite my dear friend Jess Alice, Director of the South Australian Writers' Centre and an old friend of mine.
Just one more hand for Omar. That was amazing. Thank you. I first met Omar, 10-ish years ago around the Melbourne poetry scene. We were tearing it up around pubs and stuff. And so I've always known you as a poet and as a rapper and as a novelist. And so to see you now with these incredible woodcuts and to be incorporating visual art into your practice is just, it's mind-blowing. But I also feel like it feels incredibly natural when you hear some of your newer pieces, which I'm going to ask you about in a second. So we've got the book just over here. So if you haven't got yourself a copy of Killernova yet, I heartily encourage you to get yourself a copy. It's a collection of some of these beautiful prints that you can see that are also for sale, as well as poems. So it's just an incredible object as an art book, but also a book of poetry, so please do check it out. I wanted to know about the genesis of the book and about your journey to discovering this new art form. When did it start? Like, when did you start connecting with it? And was it, I know that your uncle also taught himself to carve wood, and he would make you things as a child. So when did you learn to do that, and what was the journey to get to this point, to get to Killernova?
Oh God, I don't quite know where to start with that. I mean, firstly, like every tribe in Borneo carves wood beautifully because it was, the most densely forested island in the world. So, the people of the interior would carve the beams of the longhouses, as I said, and then peoples of the coastline, like my grandfather's people, the Suluk, would carve the prows of boats with floral designs and dragons' heads and things like that. And even the handles of the mandals, which are the machetes used to take heads in war, because it's a head hunting culture, they would be whittled and carved with elaborate designs too. And so this kind of punk rock style, I see it as just a remix or an update of something that's been happening for a long time. But I learnt, as I said, off these punk rockers. Yeah, it was probably about 4 years ago. At that moment, I'd had writer's block for a long time. So I'm about to say something very, very, this is going to sound so bougie, but I had this kind of artistic meltdown in a 1,000-year-old castle in Umbria.
It's a good place to have it.
In Italy. I was at this writer's residency, like next to Tuscany, and I was there for 6 months, and there was like a chef and everything. It was crazy, it was amazing. It should have been the most creatively generative time in my life, but I wasn't able to write anything, and I sort of had got to this point in my life where I think I'd been touring for so long and so hard and burning the candle at both ends that I had come to absolutely hate and loathe the thing that was supposed to be my life's passion, writing, and also performing. I just didn't love it anymore, and it left me feeling really, really adrift. And so a few weeks later, I went up the river in Indonesia, and I knew that I was looking for a new way with which to express myself. I didn't know what it was going to be, but I wanted it to have nothing to do with words. I knew that. And for a little bit, I thought it might be related to dance, because I saw a lot of like beautiful traditional dance styles when I was up the river. But sadly, I'm not really bestowed with that gift. Then, after this amazing journey that I described to you, I crossed over to Malaysian Borneo, and I was at this place called the Tamparuli Living Arts Centre. And I think it's the only arts residency in Borneo, as far as I know. But there was a guy there called Arik Lost Control, and it's not his government name, but he's a punk rocker and an activist from my dad's hometown, Sandakan, and he was running a woodcutting workshop. And so I was like doing some raps on a different stage, and I could see what they were doing over there, and I thought that it looked a lot cooler than what I was doing, and I wanted to be a part of it. And so I went over and I said, hey man, can I give it a go? I'm probably going to be really shit at this. And he was like, yeah, sit down. And we like sat down on the ground, and he taught me how to use the U-shaped gouge, the V-shaped one, and told me the different effects, told me I had to write the letters backwards because it prints in reverse, and told me to carve away from my fingers, and that, you know, and then he said, that's it, now carve what you feel, you know, carve what you feel. And I carved a clouded leopard, a Bornean clouded leopard, because I wanted, having been obsessed for so long with the dark side of human nature in my writing, I just wanted to make something beautiful. And the leopard, the clouded leopard, one of the rarest of all the big cats, and the littlest of all the big cats, it's the most beautiful thing I know, even though I've never seen one. I've never seen one in real life. I've only seen them on YouTube or in my sort of reveries, I guess. And so I carved that. And then, I don't know, he kind of gave me this look, and he was like, man, I think you're going to be good at this. And he gave me some wood and the tools and the encouragement, you know. Sorry, that was how I started woodcutting.
Amazing. And then I guess you sort of failed to keep words out of it because now we've ended up here.
Because a leopard can't change its spots.
Because a leopard can't change its spots. And through the process of learning to carve wood and learning this practice and spending time there, what was that journey about connecting to your ancestors and connecting to your culture? Like, was there something about the physical act of making that, like, was that part of the journey for you as well?
Yeah, for sure. It wasn't something that I immediately thought of, like, oh, here I am, updating something that my ancestors have been doing for thousands of years. It did come sort of naturally. I enjoyed it. But then I started to think, you know, about all the beautiful wood carving I'd seen on that trip, which was so sort of life-changing for me. And then I thought about my uncle Bakri, who was never taught to carve wood, but he can carve like these beautiful, intricate boats, sort of scaled down boats from all around the world. And he uses scraps of the curtains for the sails and chopsticks for the masts, and then he gets the jackfruit wood and he cuts it down himself and makes the boats. And when I was a kid, he used to, like, that was a way that I would stay connected with my culture, because my uncle Bakri would send me like rattan bags that he would weave and little helicopters made of wood, very intricate helicopters, and if you pulled the string, the propeller would go around. And then I started thinking about wood and its relationship to the culture, but then also how wood was such a sought-after commodity by the British. You know, that was one of the main reasons they came to North Borneo, was to exploit the resources. And they, you know, it wasn't even really the Crown that ran Borneo at first. It was a trade company, and they made no bones about the fact that they were there just to basically, you know, take. And so, you know, this way that my ancestors have expressed themselves, like all of the endemic species of, you know, being destroyed and disappearing. And then even when it comes to the wood carving, you know, I was taught to carve on MDF wood, which is like compressed sawdust held together by glue, basically. And as my friend says, it's like MDF is to wood what mortadella is to a pig, okay? But it carves easily, and we all carve with it. But it is a byproduct of that corrupt logging industry. So the very material that we're using to criticize the logging industry is a byproduct of it. And then, you know, as you carve it, like the glue is carcinogenic. So I'm like, as I'm creating, I'm destroying myself because I'm too stupid to wear a mask as well. Yeah, anyway, so
so that the complicity is a word that you've used, and in that opening poem where you would in inhale and exhale, you were talking about some of these like contradictory states of being, or these that are somewhat at odds, but sometimes you're both of those things at once. And considering the style, the iconography in this work, you're bringing an incredibly contemporary motifs into an ancient tradition of wood carving, and so there's old and new and contemporary and traditional in this place. Is this a generative space for you? This feeling of being there's this the diaspora experience. Is this a comfortable place for you? Is it generative? How do you...
Creating the woodcuts and everything?
Yeah.
Definitely. I mean, it brought back my love for creating things. It brought back my love for words as well. Because I think over the years, and it's just something, I think it just happens kind of naturally, you start to take yourself too seriously and your process too seriously, and you start to impose too much pressure on yourself. And then there's pressure from the outside as well. And so I'd lost the playful joy that I had when I was a child, just drawing with my Aussie grandma or coming up with little poems and rhymes and thoughts. And so over the years, even though intellectually I would say to students, if I went and talked to high school kids, I was like, oh, look, it's important to be playful with form and to come up with new ways of expressing yourself and experiment and trial and error and this and that. Even if, I would say, even if you're talking about the most deadly serious thing, it's important to be playful with how you do it. That's how we come up with fresh ways of expressing ourselves and new languages with which to speak. But then I didn't follow that, and so having something where there was no expectation whatsoever, it brought back that joy and that sort of playful sense. So yeah, it was really generative, and I've tried to keep that sacred. But then it's tricky because now I've put it in a book that's in shops and for sale.
Is there something that for you at this point and because I know that you've also been doing other kinds of art making. I know that you've been getting into glass sculpture at the incredible Canberra Glass Works, and I know that you've been playing around a little bit with photography. For me, as a poet as well, I often think about, for me, poetry is such a truthful and a precise medium. That's where I like to work in, because I feel like I'm getting to the essence of something. But what is it that for you visual art can do that the poetry can't, or what is it that the other mediums or these other materials? And I know that we've got some other mixed media artists here and some comic artists here. What is it for you that the visual component is bringing now that you kind of weren't getting before?
It's so interesting because I think out of all the forms of writing, poetry is the most distilled, sculpted and precise. But then, I'm not sure, to me, I find it so frustrating. I find words so insufficient and kind of impossible. So the word impossibility or impossible comes up again and again in the book, in different contexts. And I found... I guess I just got to a point where I found words insufficient to express myself, and then I started thinking about other forms, my mum says that dance is the purest way of communing with the gods, and I think that's beautiful. I think she stole it off Aeschylus.
Your mum is quite a smart woman, though.
My mum's a very, very smart woman. Yeah, I think it's something that one of the ancient Greeks said, I'm pretty sure. But I don't want to pretend like I know who it is, because recently on Radio National, I tried to sound really smart and quote Aristotle, but I quoted Socrates instead and sounded like a complete fuckwit. So anyway, that's out there, me trying to be smart. But yeah, and so I guess also, well, speaking of my mum, I grew up in a really artistic household. My mum was an arts journalist and a theatre historian. My father was a poet and an actor in Malaysia. And I was... we were always broke when I was growing up, but I was very privileged because my mum ran a very small arts magazine called Muse Magazine. It was like almost like a street press thing. And so she got paid nothing, but we got free tickets to go to the theatre and galleries and stuff like that. So I'm very much a product of the Canberra art scene. I was just around it. I soaked everything in through osmosis. So this whole idea of being restricted to one genre is weird to me, because I always just soaked in different ones and thought, oh, okay, that's a different weapon I could add to my arsenal to try and express myself. And so, yeah, I'm not sure what drew me to it. But then again, like, my writing was always very visual as well. Like, I often start with an image or a vision and work backwards from there anyway. So it seems kind of natural that I'd then just go straight to the image.
A lot of the themes in the works do have this an environmental consciousness, which I suppose makes sense that you were meeting these activists. One of my favourite pieces in the book, one of the carvings, is of a frog, and it says, I think it's beautiful thing, vanishing thing, stunning. And this environmental theme is something that I don't really remember in your early work, because I've known you for quite a long time. How did you find your way to thinking about this more? And was this journey part of that, to being, or maybe I'm getting it wrong, but is this like a newer focus for you? Certainly it's becoming more urgent in our world right now.
I mean, I think it's something I've explored before. Like the novel Here Come the Dogs was all about bushfire ravaged Australia, and I kind of talk a little bit about it in there, and about the failure of politicians to kind of act on it. But then, I think probably seeing the environmental destruction wrought on Borneo and being influenced by these activists who are at the front line, But I wanted to approach it. In my own way, because it felt sort of false if I kind of adopted the type of sloganeering that they use, because they do those big posters that sort of remind you of protest posters from the 70s, punk rock posters and everything. It felt false if I sort of used that, because I'm not at the front line like them. Equally, it felt false to use traditional kind of iconography, tribal iconography and stuff, having been born and raised here. So that's why I sort of came up with my own style, where I take my iconography of emoticons and pop culture references and stuff like that, mixed with images of the natural world. And then instead of the kind of slogans, like, I have couplets of poetry or stories. And so I wanted to make a comment on the environmental destruction, but more in a narrative style. So, for instance, there's one artwork in there about how my grandfather used to go to this piece. My father used to go to this piece of land in the middle of the jungle on the border of Brunei, Indonesia, and Malaysia, and he would sit on the edge of this little hut and read the Quran. And this family of orangutans used to come down and like listen to him reading the Quran. And that's just like one of the most beautiful things I've ever heard. And they would just watch him for hours. And but then the next time he went back there was no orangutans there, because the habitat had been destroyed, and also there are people that kill them for bushmeat, And so that was a story where I thought I could speak very potently to what's going on over there in my own way,
Yeah, I mean, now that you say it, I totally see there is so much of the protest sign aesthetic, actually. Yeah. And with that humour as well, and using those motifs, that's so reminiscent.
The humour was a big thing for me, because it's like, if you know me, I'm always just fucking around and being silly and stuff. But then, like, people get this idea that I'm just so deadly serious. They'll be like, oh, Omar Musa, what's he like? Is he like really deep and serious? Like, no, I'm always just talking shit, And so I took a lead from Jason Fu, the great artist, who kind of always uses little bits of dialogue and stuff like that. He's a dear friend of mine. And like kind of little characters as well. Like, I kind of have like characters that pop up. You don't really know who they are, but they're kind of interacting with each other. And I realised that this could be a vehicle for me to express that more silly kind of humorous side. And I found that really joyous as well. Because that was only something that would ever come out in shows. Like, in between serious poems, I'd then like just talk with the audience and stuff. And so it was really cool.
So artists like Jason Fu, Abdullah, like people like those guys, collaborators and friends of yours. So I get a great sense that a lot of these works in this book has come out of a real sense of community and comradeship with other artists, but also the mentors who you have. There's some beautiful photos of you and some of your mentors. Can you speak about that? Because I feel like often poetry is such a solitary, and novel writing as well too is such a solitary artistic pursuit. And now you're working with so many mentors and collaborators. That must be a beautiful way to be working.
Definitely. I mean, I've always sought out mentors. Like, I've always sought out people who have done the thing that I'm trying to do. Like, so when I wrote the novel, like, you know, Christos Scholkes and Namely, like, I sought them out and I picked their brains, because I feel like people who have done it, they have distilled knowledge. It would be so arrogant of me to think that I know exactly what I'm doing here. No, you don't. Like, go and ask the people who have done it, and then you can put your own spin on it. And so I sought that out with people like Jason and Abdul. I mean, they're just friends of mine as well. And then actually, after Arik lost control, taught me how to do the woodcutting, a month later, I flew back there. Like, I cancelled a couple of things and I flew back there and I was like, hey, can I give you a bit of cash? Because, you know, he just like busks on the street, sells his woodcuts like just on the street and stuff. And so I like said, can I give you some money like to teach me more techniques and stuff? And so he just sat there for like a few weeks and hung out and drank and smoked and made woodcuts, you know. And then, yeah, that idea of collaboration, because like Pangrok Sulap is the big collective in Borneo. Pangrok is punk rock, Malayanization of punk rock. Sulap is a farmer's hut. And so they're this big collective over there, and they don't sign it with their individual names when they make an artwork. It's always about the collective. They sign it with the collective name. And even when they print it, and it's always printed with the feet, by stamping on it with your feet. Oftentimes 8 people will do it at once, like everyone will do it together, pressing the ink to the cloth or the paper, and playing music as well, because they say it gives it extra semangat, which is extra spirit. And so that idea of creating things collaboratively, I mean, I guess, yeah, because I'd been involved in such solitary pursuits, I'd never really thought of doing something like poetry that way. But in the book, I've got collaborative poems with Inua, with Tishani Doshi, and then artworks as well. And my mentor, Yi Ilan, talks about this idea of the tikar. And the tikar is the traditional woven mat all throughout Southeast Asia. And she talks about its political resonances, about how there were sort of indigenous forms of egalitarian philosophy, I guess you could say, of people sitting around a tikar, collaborating in the round, and cross-pollinating ideas and trading yarns and all that sort of thing. And so she spoke about how important that was in art making. And I remember we had these huge arguments where I would say, no, you know, the artist should be the dictator of their own vision. You know, I said art is not something, like good art. I even said this, I remember when the Wheeler Centre asked me to write 10 pieces of advice for a young writer. I was like, good art is not created by democratic referendum, right? It's crazy. And it's so sort of arrogant, I guess, as well, and individualistic. So anyway, yeah, I guess this book is a celebration of like upturning that whole approach to art making.
Yeah, and we were, again, this word complicity, like I feel like it comes up so often. And we were talking about, in the spoken word style, maybe, in the style of like slam and a lot of poetry, there's a lot of righteousness to it. Like there's often a real like, I guess because so much of it is social justice, like focused or like themes. So there is often a maybe a didactic or sometimes a sanctimonious kind of quality to it. And tell me about that and about this notion of complicity and not wanting to be complicit and not being the one with all the answers and acknowledging the messiness of some of these things.
Yeah, I mean...
And not being the dictator.
Well, yeah, I mean, I just feel like it always, for me at least, I can only speak from my own point of view, it rings sort of hollow when I'm talking about all of these social issues and sort of pontificating and preaching as if I haven't played a part in any of these systems of exploitation or anything like that. Like, and so I feel like it gives it extra potency and resonance when you first put that exacting eye on yourself, and then you can speak about the broader issues. And it's sort of, I don't know, it's in better faith or something, as far as I'm concerned. And so, yeah, there's a poem in there where I have this line, and I was so proud of it. It was like, to be born is to be complicit, right? And I put it in there, and blah, blah, and then later on it says, complicit how, you know? And then, like, after it got printed up, I was thinking about it, and I was like, man, I don't think that's my line. Like, I think I've stolen that from somewhere. And I couldn't figure out where it was, and I Googled it, and it was like nowhere to be found. And then I sort of had this thought, like, is it this? I thought it had something to do with the English poet Simon Armitage, and I was just like, oh my God. I wrote his name in, didn't turn up. I eventually got his email, and I emailed him about it. And I was like, hey, this thing's been bugging me. I lost a lot of sleep about it. And then he said, yeah, well, I've said it in a speech once. He replied, he very kindly said, I said it in a speech once, to be born is to be complicit. And you must have heard it and like got into your head. And I was like, well, fuck, I'm so sorry. You know? And he was like, no, it's all good. It's yours now. I've never written it down. I said it in a speech. I was like, sweet. But anyway, I thought it was really ironic because all that, even in writing that down, I suddenly became complicit in some like some fucked up kind of plagiarism, some cardinal sin of writing, you know? Anyway. So I try to put that out there as much as possible because I feel like some poetry sleuth will like cancel me or something.
No,
you know?
it's a huge thing, isn't it? Like, but it is a huge thing. Like in poetry, I feel like every year or so there's another. Someone will write an expose about someone who hasn't either properly credited works in a collection or has maybe taken a few liberties. But maybe that's the perfect workaround. Just forget that you did it, email Simon Armitage, and then all sins are forgiven.
Yeah, apparently. I feel like I've been like name dropping heaps, but you know, look, it is what it is.
If you've got it, flaunt it. So can you walk us through, because we've got these beautiful artworks here, I wondered if you could maybe this one here, if you could walk us through it, like give us a little bit of a tour of, say, this artwork here, and tell us a bit about, for people who haven't got the book yet, this might be a good introduction.
Yeah.
Like, walk us through the process of making one of these.
Yeah, you feel, I mean, I kind of, I'm flying blind most of the time when I create it. Like a lot of my friends, like Abdullah gets really pissed off. He's just like, you should use an iPad and like plot it first out to see what it's going to look like. I go, no, it's not as fun that way. There's not that risk and reward, the risk and revelation, you know. And so I just I draw straight onto the board. Like I buy a big piece of MDF from Bunnings, and then I just like drew across with a pencil. And then I started drawing little bits. So it was in the middle of the bushfires. And like I've always written so much about bushfires and responded to them. And then there was also this parade of vulgarity that's going on in our fucking government. You know, Scott Morrison jumping up and down, carrying on. And so I started like slowly piecing together little, I guess, like icons, and so this is the Bundy, like this is the Bundy polar bear, but kind of martyred, you know, and he's been shot with arrows and he's sitting on a little turd island. And then this is the Lacoste crocodile, you know, like you see a lot of the young dudes like wearing the Lacoste and everything. And then I wanted to have like Ronald McDonald here, like a drunk alcoholic Ronald McDonald hanging off the upside down thing. And then like a lot of the stuff about the police was going on at that time as well. And so, I mean, look, this is just a vessel for all of my chaotic ideas. And so I had the policeman like getting head off another policeman here in the Cadillac, and then two duck-faced mermaids taking selfies of themselves. Anyway, so I kind of like, I create these images kind of haphazardly throughout it, and then I walk away from it for a while. Like it took me ages, like months to do it. And then I'd kind of introduce different characters throughout it. And so, for instance, there's this kind of a young couple in love in the corner of it all, because I wanted to bring that human element to this phantasmagoria. And then, and so I created them, and then me, the leopard, lapping at a luxor while someone laughing points a gun at my head. And then you're still flying blind though, because basically you've got all these characters and sort of isolated images, that are symbols of an Australia and a world that has completely lost equilibrium environmentally and socially. And then it becomes about tying it all together somehow through the tiny little effects. And so it only really comes together towards the end. After all the main images are created, I start to do, like, say, tie it in with all the flames that are coming through here, or these dollar signs and kisses and hugs, X's and O's that turn into pills that move through here, and to give it kind of like a sweeping movement. Like, I always wanted to have this movement. And then very last, I put the words in. Almost like, Maori carvers talk about putting the eyes into a sculpture right at the end of it. As I'm creating the work, I'm distilling the words, like, and to make almost like perfect, seamless couplets. That's what I'm aiming for. And so, yeah, the words always come last, and that's the final stage of the woodcut. Oh, no, it's not. And then you print it.
And then you print it.
And then you roll it with ink. Yeah, see. And then you like roll it all with ink. I'll put the paper or the cloth like on the ground, and then you carefully like place it down on it, and then you rap a song, you dance, you print on it, and it sticks with the viscous ink, and then I carefully flip it over, and then I kind of like roll it up and peek, and then I use like a spoon or a baron like to like rub it a bit more, and then I peel it all off. That one was done with an electric press though. So
Beautiful.
yeah, there you go.
And then it becomes a book.
Then it becomes a book.
We are just about out of time, but I know that Omar is going to do one more piece for us. Thank you so much for chatting with me and for sharing so much about these works, about where Killernova came from. Actually, before I throw it over to the poem, you just showed me this beautiful book that Omar just picked up about kimonos and all this beautiful fabric and stuff. So like textiles, like what are the mediums that you're interested in? What are you feeling inspired by at the moment?
Glass at the moment. Yeah. I'm working a lot with glass because I didn't realize, it just seemed so beyond, it's so impossible, to work with glass. I've actually got a friend who's an amazing glassmaker here who I used to work with at the Canberra Glassworks. She was my boss. I was just in the retail shop, but I had this sneaky, sly plan that if I worked in the retail long enough and looked pretty enough, that eventually they would ask me maybe to work with some of the glassworkers, and that's exactly what happened. My sly, conniving plan worked out, and this lady who was a glass caster, Luna Ryan, said, actually, the skills that you've got with woodcuts, you can use it in glass casting to carve the wax and then cut. Yeah, so that's what I've been doing, and I just find it such an incredible, ethereal art form to work in. Cloth, maybe, but all the weavers I've seen, that looks so technical and almost too mathematical for my brain. It just does not operate that way. I quit writing a few years ago, and I went back to TAFE and studied horticulture, and I was like, okay, I'm not going to be an artist ever again. I'm going to be a gardener. That's what I'm going to do. And as soon as it became slightly scientific about pH levels and that, it was I'm out of here. I can't do it. So.
Well, I look forward to seeing you back here for the glass sculpture exhibition. Everyone, please join me in thanking Omar Musa.
Thank you.
Remember to buy a book. You can get it signed, and you can also buy one of the beautiful prints. So you better get in quick, because I think there's quite a few people with their eyes on them. And now I'm going to throw it over to you. Take us out with a poem.
Thank you. Jessica Alice. All right, this is quite a short one. So last year, during a gap in space and time and the plague, I went up to the Blue Mountains, and I was with some family, with a family, and I saw this particular type of pink flannel flower, and they're very, very rare. They only appear, I think, twice a century, and they need the perfect conditions. And I thought they were incredibly beautiful, so I wrote a poem about them. This is called Flannel Flowers. Called forth from the scorched earth, These flannel flowers bloom once every 50 years. Great pink umbrellas, tiny, feathered, furred like mothwing, constellated across this burnt-out canyon. We trek through blackened banksias, lignotubers gnarled and twined in the peat, their burst pods like so many eyes and mouths, like omnidirectional cameras pointed every which way. Out into the valley where the cliffs far beyond are divided as if by design, upright plains down which pewter streams when it rains sometimes. Up at the bluest, memoryless sky, and towards us, lunching in a hollow in the rock. Miri is crouching down with Kimmy to look at the flannel flowers in the dust and the purple fringe lilies amongst them, which are delicate beyond belief and last only for one day. Miri is not to know that this might be the only time she or we will ever see these blooms, inherit through touch their grace, touch them as if testing a new word. Miri is only 2 years old and her world yet ahead. The old couple who arrive as we leave have come to sight these flowers for the first and last time, like certain eclipses, like comets, these heavenly bodies at our feet. Last week, Jessie saw a woman shake ashes from the cliffs here, out into the canyon where the winds whistle and sing hymns beneath black cockatoos' wings that riffle the bracts and bow the heads of flannel flowers who lay so long in refuge, made possible only by the perfect conspiracy of catastrophic fire, time, and deluge. Thank you guys. Thanks so much for having me in Adelaide. I really appreciate it. Come and say hello afterwards or up there. Yeah. Much love. Thank you.